I'm Sarah Burke, and this is the Women in Media podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest. I feel like I've been chasing you for a while. Erika Ayers Badan is with me to talk about her brand new book, Nobody Cares About Your Career. And how are you today?
I'm great. I like the Unwell Tour poster.
Oh, yeah. That I had to add a podcast, poster to all my music stuff because now I'm in podcasting.
Yeah, I love it.
So, my first question, which hasn't really been answered in listening to your book, I've been listening to the audio version, which I love that you read, is the timing of all of this. You would have been working on this book while you were still at Barstool, and now you're on a new journey. So maybe tell me about the timing.
Yeah, it was funny. I started the book probably 3.5 years ago, so a while ago. I started it when we had sold a majority stake of Barstool to a company called Penn Entertainment.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine, my job at Barstool was very free and kind of wild, and everything was possible, and it was all about creativity, and it was a pirate ship, right? Like I was running a pirate ship, and we were sailing very fast and going very far and pillaging and plotting and doing our thing. And then my world kind of changed because I was trying to take this pirate ship and get it into a highly regulated, publicly traded company. And so it was kind of like the record scratch of every day I'm like trying to fill out the TPS report, and I'm going to meetings with 40 people in them, and it's a lot of PowerPoints. And it was very jarring, and I really felt this loss of creativity because the last, 5-6 years was just spent building and creating and iterating and trying things. And it was very much about content. And so I started to write the book on my commute. I have a long commute, and I was writing it on the train between home and work.
So smart.
And it just kind of, and I think the book, if you're listening to it, maybe you agree or maybe you disagree. It kind of feels like a conversation. Like it sounds like I'm talking. So that was really when I started to write it. The thing that was really funny about it is I got to the last section of the book, which is, do you stay in your job or do you leave your job? What do you do when you're in a time of change? And I'm like writing all this perspective and opinion about when you leave your job and what you should do. And then I was like, oh shit, like I should be following some of my own advice on this. So it was good for me to write. And I think it's rare to have I don't even know if you would call this a business book, but it's funny, I think, to have a book being written by someone trying to figure something out as they're writing the book.
In the messy middle.
Yeah, in the messy middle. Exactly.
Yeah, no, you can totally hear that. And it's like you don't exactly come out and say that you're grappling with this decision, but like you could totally tell as someone who's been following your career, I'm like, I have a feeling that this was at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So, there's usually something that like sparks like this first idea for a book. Was there like, whether it was an incident or an inspiration, was there something that was like, okay, I got to write a book?
I really always liked writing emails. I remember working at AOL, and we would have something. I remember being on a red eye once back from like a sales conference at AOL, and I had really tried to change how the salespeople at AOL felt about themselves and what they had to go to market with and all this kind of stuff. And I remember being on this red eye, and everyone else I worked with was like, I'm going to have like 30 drinks and then like pass out on the plane. And I was like fervently on my phone writing an email about what was so great about the event and what was terrible about it and what we should do differently and what I was inspired by. And I remember my coworkers being like, you're such a loser. Like, why are you writing all this? Like, who cares? And I was like, I am a loser, but I've always really liked to write. And I feel like I'm more comfortable in writing than I am on video per se. And I was at Barstool, I had never intended this, but I ended up doing a lot of video, or at least by my standards, I guess. And I was getting all of these Q&A questions. So I probably get about 500 DMs a week of people just being like, hey, this shit is going on at work. What do you think about it? And then I was seeing things happening in my work and in the way I was working. And I was like, you know what? Like, it's easier for me to write. I feel like I'm more able to be, my emotion is more, it's like just more effectively deployed in writing. And so that's really that's what prompted me to start to write it.
That's so cool. The one email that you shared in the book where you were like trying to come down on everyone for hooking up in the
Oh
office,
my God.
you read it word for word, and I was like, what a like story in an email.
We
So
were,
that was
yeah,
awesome.
it's just for people listening to it. So Barstool was funny. I was the only woman there for quite some time, probably 8 months. And life was really easy and good. Like there wasn't any, no one was dating. There wasn't just like a lot of the distraction. And obviously I wanted to hire women at work, but it was like all 20 somethings. And then everybody started hooking up. Like everyone was hooking up with everyone. And then it was so and so wouldn't work with someone because they had dated and it didn't really work out. And this marketing person was jealous of that. And I just was like, oh my God, we live in like a big city. Like, go date someone who doesn't work here.
What was the stat there? How many people in New York City?
Oh,
You're
I
like,
forget. It was like there's
uh,
X number of millions of people in New York City. Like, go find one. There's 10 million people. I think it was 10 million people. There were 10 million people in New York City at the time. Go, like, do not choose the 45 people here to hook up with. Like, go
yeah.
have sex with somebody else.
It's interesting that you mentioned only 8 months is the only woman. Of course, on this podcast, titled Women in Media, sometimes we
Yeah.
discuss the challenges and triumphs that women go through in the media spotlight. And you very quickly became such a public profile associated with Barstool. How was that for you at the beginning of your time there?
Oh, it was very jarring. Like
Yeah.
I never intended to be public. I can remember my announcement video. Dave Portnoy really wanted to do the announcement video. We wanted to do the announcement video, and I was like, let's hold off on the announcement video. There's no rush on the announcement video. And I think I probably had like 2,000 Twitter followers. I didn't even really know how to use Twitter. I wasn't using Twitter.
Yeah.
And the announcement video dropped, and literally overnight it was 20,000. And I was like, oh my
Jeez.
God, this is such a different, this
The
is,
power of Dave.
Dave is a unicorn. And I was like, holy shit, this is a lot. I think it's hard to be public. There's a lot of tax that comes with it. There's also really exhilarating, amazing things that come from it, where you can touch people and you can inspire things and be inspired and be part of something bigger. And,
Yeah.
I think for women in media, women need to see more women doing things.
Hell yeah.
My particular like brand of it is like, you should like, I'm trying to get back to my run club. So I like just went for a run before this. I'm like, women should see other women doing stuff and like being okay to be in the mess of doing it and not being perfect. Like it's funny, I'm having like a brand summit this week, and I'm writing like what I am and what I'm not. And I'm like, I'm not Sheryl Sandberg. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I'm not Harvard educated. I'm not. And I think it's good for women in business, whether you work in media or not, to be like, I'm trying something. I'm putting myself out there. I'm okay taking a risk. I realize I don't look perfect. I'm 10 pounds heavier than I want to be. My hair's dirty, like whatever. Like, you got to embrace the mess of it, because it's always going to be a mess.
Yeah. Has there been, I mean, I'm sure there has been an experience, but is there one that stands out where, someone tried to challenge you because you were a woman? I feel like there's not a lot of that with you, but.
Oh, with me?
Yeah, I feel like the way that you carry yourself, I just feel like you'd have it handled so quick.
Oh, when I got to Barstool, it would bother me. Like, I mean, they called me the token, right? I created a show called The Token.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got so pissed off of people being like, "Oh, you're just,
The
you're
token
just
woman hired for the
to
job.
be a, to dress them up and be a beard and make them look good." There was a lot of that. I think like, I don't really think about gender a lot. I think if you're in a good place with yourself, I think sometimes I'm more mannish than I am feminine, or more masculine than I am feminine. And other times I'm like super girly. And then I'm, I think everybody's kind of a little bit of everything now, which is cool. But I think the biggest thing is you have to be confident in yourself, and you have to be sure of where you want to go, and you need to be vulnerable in that process. Like, I think the single best thing about being a woman is that you can show vulnerability in a way that is just completely disarming It brings people together. It gets people on the bus of what you're trying to do. It creates empathy. And like,
Yeah.
how lucky are we that we can tap into that in a
Yeah.
way that I think men really struggle to?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I just want to get stuff done and make
Yeah.
stuff and learn and be pushing to a place that I've never been before and people who work with me have never gone before.
Yeah.
And I think that every workplace should be like that. Now, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but like,
No,
I
no,
also get
please.
like royally pissed off. Like, I was in a meeting. I went to CAA last week, and
Okay.
I went to CAA, and I go into the lobby, and I look behind the reception desk, which is obviously staffed by a woman, and there's all the shoes of the CAA clients. So it's all like basketball sneakers, and it's Dwayne Wade, and I don't know, all these Jalen Rose, all these people. And
Yeah.
I was like, CAA, would it fucking kill you to put a woman's shoe up here? Like, do you have any woman that you
Yeah.
represent that could have their shoe on the wall? So that kind of stuff annoys me. I'm on the board of the PLL, and we've been having a bunch of conversations. I'm the only woman on the board. We've been having a conversation with a bunch of like investment people, and we go into those meetings, and it's like rooms of white guys, and I'm like,
Every
Jesus,
time.
like read the room, people. Like, it's 2024. Like, you gotta have a woman around.
Yeah.
So that stuff makes me mad, but I also am comfortable calling it out, and
Yeah.
I think that's important too.
Yeah. In your book, you talk so much about like failure,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe vulnerability is what gets you out of a failure in
Yeah.
some cases. But what is a failure that ended up being very defining for your career that you wouldn't mind sharing here?
Oh, I fail all the time. Like,
But give us
every
a good
day I
one.
fail. I left the CMO job at AOL. I was really unmotivated and kind of disenfranchised at AOL. I was not the best version of myself. And I really didn't like myself, to be honest. And I left to go do this startup in the music space, which turned out to be really like a huge disaster. Like, it didn't work. There was a lot of baggage behind the scenes. It wasn't really ever set up for success. It didn't feel good. It did take me out of I really, when I write about this in the book too, when I got the CMO job, I was like, this was all I ever wanted. It was all I ever
Yes.
thought I would be. I was like, oh, finally I can like stop like struggling, and I've quote unquote made it. And then I got it, and I was like, oh my God, I hate this. So it was the experience was a failure, but it was great in that it got me out of a place where I knew I didn't want to be long term. I didn't know the best way to get out of it. I could have dismounted from that more gracefully, I think. The startup was painful, I write about this as well, which is the reason I think failure is so great is even when you go through something inordinately shitty and humiliating or shameful, or you mess up, you look back on it and you're like, but if I didn't do this, this other thing wouldn't happen. And I really think if I hadn't made that jump, I wouldn't have gotten to Barstool. And so
Yeah,
for me,
totally.
I'm like, that was a total bomb, but it created the arguably the best career thing in my life. So
Yeah. Now talk about that sort of like gut alert that you get when you're not feeling challenged anymore and you're like, I'm sort of I'm
yeah,
sort of mailing it in here
yeah,
and I'm not excited about it
yeah,
anymore. Cause, I feel like you at some point had to make a decision about
yeah,
Barstool too. So talk me through
definitely.
that.
Yeah, I think so if I take a step back and I think about what I was trying to do in this book is I really think that in life and in work, there's two things that kind of hold you back. One is your ego, which is that you think you're better than you are, you think you're above something, or you think you don't have something to learn. And the other is your insecurity, which is the exact opposite. You are afraid to try. You think you can't. You are obsessing or anxietying around what is wrong with you or what's deficient in you. And really, I think the two of those things need to like get into the back seat and like shut the fuck up, and then you can go be productive in your life. But I think one of the things that happens to people a lot is that you get into a routine. Like you get into a routine. Everything is really predictable. This Monday and next Monday and 3 Mondays from now and 6 months of
Yeah.
Mondays from now, things are very same. And some people like that. I personally, that makes me really nervous because it makes me be like, oh God, like nothing's changing, like nothing's chaotic, nothing's percolating. And
Yeah.
I know things are percolating other places and I must be missing something. But the reason that people don't change is it's really comfortable. You know, I talk in the book about my friend Kim, and my friend Kim had like a big fancy job in media, and she had a car service, and she got picked up and driven to work. She had got picked up and went home like, you'd go to an event with Kim and her driver would take you home. I mean, it was the best thing ever. It was amazing. But Kim wasn't being pushed. Kim wasn't learning. Kim wasn't growing. Kim's job wasn't changing. And you find yourself, I think, often in a place where you're like, yeah, this is comfortable. I can go to the gym every morning, or I can go for drinks every night, or I can do my personal business all day at work. But you're not pushing yourself forward. And what I really believe is it's a waste of time. And,
Yeah.
I was feeling a little bit of that at Barstool's never boring. And by any other yardstick, it's just crazy time all the time. But I was feeling like every Monday was becoming the same, and I just didn't want to stay too long, and I didn't want to ever mail it in. I felt like that would be very disrespectful to this place that I loved and that I worked so hard to help build. And I think there are times in your life where your life may be crazy and you need work to be like quiet and stable and like a nothing burger. But most of the time, you should be looking for work as a way to grow you.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did you stumble on Food52? Maybe you can talk a
So
little
it's
bit.
so random. It's funny.
Yeah.
I talked to Fast Company last week, and they were like, "What are you doing there?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm asking myself." So when probably like 2018, 2019, Barstool was having like early indications of success. And the Chernin Group, who had invested in Barstool, was like, ooh, like we could have a Barstool of food. You could have a Barstool of music. You can have a Barstool of this, a Barstool of that, which people still talk about. And there will never really actually be a Barstool of anything but Barstool. But Food52 was kind of interesting because they had a really big community. They had a deep community. They had loyal community. They were making products for their community. The origin story was kind of similar to Barstool, where there was a founder, Amanda Hesser. She had made a food blog. She was thinking about retail as she was thinking about recipes and content. And I joined, I think, as an advisor in 2019. So I had been like hanging around the hoop at Food52 for a while. And I joined the board formally last summer. And we sold Barstool twice last year, which, was kind of amazing and terrible and awesome and just wild. To go through 2 acquisitions in a year, one being for $500 million, and then the other for being $1. That was a lot. But what I realized after we had completed the sale to Dave is I was like, look, like as a CEO coming in to grow and drive value for a company, like I've really done everything I could possibly do here. Like 2024 is not going to beat 2023, or 2025 isn't going to beat 2023, whatever. And I was getting approached a lot to go work at a gambling company or work at a sports media company, or, go run this, go run that. And what I realized from the Penn experience was like, ooh, like I don't love the big company thing. Like I just get bored and badly behaved quickly if I have to just like sit and pontificate. Like I need to be building something. I want to be building something. And I wanted to do something around women. Barstool was so focused on men. It was so masculine, and I loved it. But I was like, I want to do something crazy, radically different. And Food52 was, having some troubles, and they were looking for a new CEO, and I was kind of stepping in to help. And I was like, I actually really like this. This is a really It's a lot of what I write about in the book, which is 70% of it I know how to do, 30% I'm completely ignorant on, and it's a great
Yeah.
opportunity for me to learn.
Yeah. And I definitely am one of those people that, like, when I saw your announcement that you were joining Food 52 like full time, I was like, okay, that is like the polar opposite of what she was doing. So
Yeah,
that must have been
exactly.
quite intentional.
Yeah, people are like, "What'd you do? And why'd you do that?" But
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think it's really good to just put yourself
Yeah.
in a radically new environment. And hey, look, like I may bomb at Food 52. Like they may spit me out and be like, "You're too weird. You're too sport." Like they're like, "Enough with the sports analogies." And I'm like, "But I only know sports analogies." Um, so, we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes. But I do think it's just really, I hope if anyone takes anything away from it is like, you can make a massive career change at any point in time.
Yeah.
And it's totally okay. And it's totally okay not to succeed at it. And it's
Yeah.
sometimes awesome if you don't succeed at it. And it's also great if you do succeed
Yeah.
at it.
Circling back to the book, did, taking this job during the process change what you shared in the book? Like, were there things that you like axed completely?
No, I didn't
Okay, I
change.
love that.
No, I didn't change. No, I
That's
didn't change
cool.
anything. I added the epilogue, which is, the note I wrote to Barstool when I left, and like I cried all over the internet for a week.
Yeah.
But I didn't change anything.
That's cool. What was the hardest thing that you did share in the book?
Oh, that's a great question. The book is like pretty vulnerable. It's like how I feel, like it's
Yeah.
how I think. So it's kind of like opening up your brain and like kind of putting it
It's like a
out.
business diary.
It is a business diary. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing was very emotional to write, um, just because it was so personal. And I don't know if there was like one story that was hardest or one.
Or something that you considered maybe taking out, but you left that you like, you were thinking about quite a bit.
Oh, like everything. I was like,
The whole thing.
it was like, I'm writing about the ESPN thing. And then I was like, the board wanted, they really wanted to do it. We didn't want to do it. This is how I thought about this. Um, I really felt like to write a good book, though, that I had to be true to like, hey, I think my whole thing is like, you got to come as you are, and everyone
Yeah.
is flawed and everyone is human and work is human. And, I think I don't know that there was a particular story or a particular thing. I tried to be really sensitive to change people's names and,
Yeah.
not share too much,
You did a great job of that, by the way.
I worked hard at that. They
Yeah.
the publisher scared me. Like they finished the book and then then I had to have a call with a lawyer and I was like, oh boy.
And now we're going to talk defamation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to have out there, and I hope anybody, whether you're in your 20s and you're like trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, or you're in your 50s and you're like, how did I get here? What do I
Yeah.
do now? I hope it can apply.
No, it totally does. So I'm going to ask you this question. I will absolutely take this out of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation if you want me to. But, I knew you on the internet as Erika Nardini for the
Yeah.
longest time. And now your book has a different name on it.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there was also a big change in your personal
Oh
life
my God.
during
Yeah.
this time.
I've had like every major possible change that
All
it
at once.
was funny. I was talking about this last night where, like I got divorced, I got remarried, my dad died, I changed my job, I moved houses 3 times. Like I have had like whatever could
Shitstorm.
change in your life is exactly a shitstorm.
Yeah.
That has happened in the last, 3.5, 4 years. So, but I loved the name Nardini. It's a great name.
Yeah.
Most people still know me by that, but I also was like, hey, this is like, that was an era and that was a time in my life. And now
Yeah.
I'm in a different time, and,
Yeah.
I want my name to fit.
Of course. Of course. And, maybe to comment on that, like personal life pre current chapter, how about support systems in the background? Because, as anyone reading your book or listening to your book has a personal life and a professional
Yep.
life, and these things happen. And how do you stay grounded as chaos is happening?
Yeah, I think you have to keep your world really small. I think one of the biggest things I've learned in my life is I was trying to keep too big of a circle. It was too superficial. I was trying to do too much. I wasn't nurturing anyone. I actually was really depleted myself. And I spent too much time trying to be perfect and trying to look a certain way and play a certain part and be a certain way to other people that would work in the moment, but longer term, it just was really depleting. I think I felt really depleted. And I was constantly looking to have more stimulation, and whether it was playing more sports or doing more work or going out to more things or making more friends. And I think that can be really dangerous. I think sometimes when something's wrong inside, it's easier to go find a lot of things outside to do versus like getting small and dealing with the thing inside. So now I am much more private. My world is like infinitely smaller, which can feel weird. It feels weird to me at times, but I also really, really appreciate it because the sounding boards are that much better, and
the quality is up. Yeah.
The quality is up and the priorities are there. And, I'm very, very grateful for that. I think in my 40s, I went through just like a fairly large transition that was very public and very painful. And I came out of it something very different, but and not probably that makes a lot of people happy, but it's better for me inside. And I think it's better for the people I'm closest to. And that's really what matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I identify a lot with that because, so I previously worked at SiriusXM in the Canadian office here. And, same sort of thing where you feel not challenged anymore, or like it's not, and you decide, you make a decision, you leave. And at the end of it, I was sort of walked out the way someone who would have been fired would have been. That it seemed almost like there was like this narrative that was starting to happen that I had nothing to do with, yet I was at the center of it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I have a microphone.
That's exactly right.
And the people who are close to me in my circles, my support systems, know exactly what went down here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm not going to have to worry about, the few people who are trying to put those pieces together on my behalf.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what's really, look, right now we live in a world where there's just so much condemnation by headline and the rumor mill. And, and the reality is, you know what, like Sirius probably wasn't right for you and you probably weren't right for Sirius. And this is great. And you own your story and you own who you are and what's great about you and the things you're working on. And I think like, it's really all anybody can ask for. I think, and I write about this a lot. I think the people at work who want the status quo and the people in life, like the people who are just, looking at what you're wearing, who you're with, how much money you have, who'd you go out with, what's she doing, what's she not doing. Like those people suck, and they suck at work. They suck in your life. Like, just be done with them and go make something.
Yeah. And that was the craziest lesson I feel like I've learned in the last few years. That's also the week that I quit, I remember was when I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this Token CEO podcast. This is so like feeding what I need right now.
That's great.
Back at that time. Yeah, I quit in 2022, but
good for you.
Thank you. And thank you for that podcast, because it carried me through a lot of those weird, those weird little feelings that you get when you go through a transition like that. But last question here, and it is kind of a two-parter. I think that it's so interesting mentoring other women with what I'm doing right now in podcasting, and you've done your fair share of mentoring in your professional life as well, but also like learning from the next generation and the people coming up. And I think you did a lot of that at Barstool as well. Would you comment on, someone you learned a lesson from that was like a mentor, but someone also up and coming? Because part of this podcast is very much like, and if you would nominate them to come on the podcast.
I have like
pass the torch kind of thing.
Definitely. Yeah. I love young people. I love young people. I love 20-year-olds. Like I love 15-year-olds. Like there is so much to learn from people who are doing things differently the first time. And I find it like really, really inspiring. So, to be honest with you, I think I learned more from people who are in age younger than me, but in experience and what they know how to do far beyond. So, there's a woman, there's so many women actually. I have this woman named Devin who helps me with all my social stuff. She works at Barstool. She does the BFFs pod. Like she's a consummate professional. She teaches me stuff every day. Like I love being around Devin. And I also am really grateful where I had really great mentors. I had really great bosses.
Gail, is that the name of the woman you keep? Yeah,
Gail should come on. She's at iHeart. She's amazing. Gail ran, a huge marketing division at Microsoft. She was tireless. She was so funny. Like she drank more like brown liquor than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. Like she loves a party. But she also was a brilliant strategist and really a brilliant marketer. Joanne Bradford was, I worked for Joanne Bradford for 12 years. She had, an indelible impact on my life and on my career. But I think it's really like, I think you can learn. My biggest thing on mentorship is I think people get a little bit too tied up in like, I need a mentor. Like I get a lot of LinkedIn, will you
like shopping for mentors?
Shopping for mentors. Like, don't shop for a mentor. Like if you get a boss and that boss is great at what they do, just study them. Like when I first, when I first started working for Joanne wouldn't give me the fucking time of day. Like Joanne didn't talk to me, I don't think for 8 months or a year, but I studied everything Joanne did. I looked what she ate. I watched what she wore. I took notes when she spoke.
This is the rolly suitcase woman, right? The
rolly suitcase, the like only put a do not check in your bag. But you can learn from people just by watching them. And I think that's like, people shouldn't sell themselves short in the like, I need to have a mentor. I think sometimes people want mentors to say they have mentors versus like actually wanting to learn something. So I think changing your mindset on that is important.
Yeah. And like you can achieve the same thing from observing someone that you could from,
Exactly.
That makes total sense. I'm going to sneak this in, but what's going to happen with Token CEO? Will it ever come back?
Oh, so it's funny you ask this. So I am trying to bring it back, but I'm going to bring it back differently. I think I'm going to call it Nobody Cares.
Love it.
And I am trying to put together what it is right now. And I think you'll see it come out, like not soon, but soonish.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, it will come back.
Okay.
It will come back.
I'm excited because I have been missing it. I'm like,
oh, that's nice. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you DM'd me. I'm like so happy.
Honestly, this has been a great conversation. And whether you know this or not, because I feel like everyone else, you also have some of the imposter syndrome that I could hear in your book.
Yeah.
But you became like, similarly to Alex Cooper, who's on my wall here, you became one of those people of great influence from that company and what you're doing now. And it's amazing watching women like you take on the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I can't wait for you to do it.
Thank you so
You're
much.
You're doing it.
I appreciate your time so much, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.